Have you ever felt the urge to want to bite, growl, pin your partner down in an uninhibited frenzy? Primal play is a raw and instinctual form of BDSM that strips away rules and protocol, letting your animalistic desires take over. Whether you're into rough sex, CNC, wrestling for dominance, or simply craving deep and carnal connection, this video is going to explore everything you need to know about exploring your wild side. I'm Brandon the Dom. Let's dive in. All right, so primal play is a BDSM activity in which the people that are participating are going to set aside their conscious inhibitions and basically act on instinct and raw urges. It's about exploring raw emotion and desire without the structure of formal rules or protocol. Unlike other forms of BDSM that require elaborate setups, costumes, or specific tools, primal play is much more stripped down. The focus is on the body, movement, and the energy exchange between the people participating. Now, while some might include props like collars or restraints, the emphasis is on natural connection rather than external elements. So to help you understand primal play, let's distinguish it from a few other kinks, fetishes, and activities that it sometimes gets confused with. First, let's talk about primal play versus pet play versus furries. At its core, primal play is about acting on uninhibited desires, doing it as they arise without hesitation. Because human behavior is shaped by norms and etiquette in society, getting in touch with these base instincts can mean returning to a more primitive state, one that kind of feels closer to an animal's way of being. And some people find that taking on the role of an animal can kind of help them to get into that primal headspace. But it's important to note, you don't have to act like an animal in order to enjoy primal play. You can just simply be a rough and tumble, uninhibited human. Now, pet play or animal play is different. In pet play, one of the participants willingly takes on the identity of an animal, like a kitten or a puppy, and then usually engages with another partner who plays the role of an owner or handler or master within a BDSM dynamic. And pet play may include activities that aren't normally associated with primal play, such as dressing like an animal, receiving treats, or eating from pet bowls. Furries, on the other hand, are people who enjoy attributing emotions and personalities to animals that have human-like traits. They create anthropomorphic animal characters or adopt non-human personas, also known as fursonas. And while furries may be involved in kink communities, their interests are usually more centered around their identity and creative expression in that instinctual physical play. The other thing we need to discern primal play from is primal play versus rough sex versus CNC. Like many kinks, primal play is not always about sex, and it's definitely not always rough sex. Primal play may include rough body play, capture and takedown, mutual non-sexual touch and exploration, or wrestling, all without any sexual contact. These types of activities can help fulfill desire to connect through raw, instinctual interaction. It doesn't have to include sex as part of that. With that said, sex absolutely can be a part of primal play, but it also doesn't have to be rough. Again, primal play is about following your instincts, and that might mean indulging in slow, sensual exploration, letting your bodies move together naturally, touching and feeling without rules or restraints, and savoring every inch of each other. Of course, if your desire starts to tip over to wanting to devour somebody, then yes, primal play might lead to more intense, ravenous sex. In which case, it might include elements like manhandling, biting, hair pulling, face fucking, and many more that I have videos for on this channel. But not all rough sex is primal play. Rough sex might be part of a predefined dominance and submission scene that has very specific rules, protocols, and roles, which is going to run directly counter to the unstructured, instinct-driven nature of primal play. Now, when primal play includes aggressive sexual energy, like one partner being restrained and roughly fucked, then it may resemble consensual non-consent or CNC. Now, CNC is a negotiated kink where consenting adults agree ahead of time to engage in scenes that involve force or coercion. Now, some forms of primal play may involve forced sex or submission, but these elements are always negotiated beforehand. With that said, CNC is also not required to engage in primal play. Both parties may freely explore one another, following their desires without trying to control the other or trying to make them do specific actions or be in specific roles. This also leads to primal play versus dominance and submission. Like many forms of BDSM, primal play can involve a form of power exchange. However, in primal play, it's a little more fluid. Dominant and submissive roles may shift naturally as the scene unfolds. It's less about those predefined roles and more about the ebb and flow of power between those two partners. And at first glance, it might seem a little counterintuitive to include dominance and submission because of dominance and submission's associations with rules, rituals, and protocols, things that primal play basically leaves behind. But primal play often features elements of overpowering, taking, and ravishing someone, which can align with a dominant mindset. And for those of you that enjoy switching roles, especially within the same scene, then primal play can be incredibly satisfying. Wrestling your partner for control or slipping from predator to prey, and then maybe back again, allows both partners to explore dominance and submission in a more spontaneous, instinct-driven way. And then the last distinction I want to make is primal play versus Tantra. So primal play does require a deep focus on sensation, presence, and tuning into desires that are authentically arising in the moment. Because of those, it's sometimes associated with tantric sex or tantric play. Tantric techniques like breath work and conscious touch can help you transition from a state that you're in everyday life to a more embodied primal state. That said, Tantra is a much more broader spiritual and energetic system. And just like BDSM, it can include primal play, but it doesn't have to. Tantra encompasses a wide range of practices that go beyond sexuality and support many different kinds of connection and exploration. Now that you understand a little bit of distinction between primal play and other types of play, let's talk about the psychology of a primal. What makes primal play so alluring? Well, consider this. Every day you wake up, you put on your work-approved clothes, fitting yourself into the expectations of HR policies and social etiquette. You go out into the world and you start interacting with people, maybe sometimes feeling a deep urge to growl or bark at that person. But of course, doing that would make you feel unhinged. You might even notice somebody that you're drawn to and want to feel the impulse to reach out, run your hands on them. Or maybe you feel that flash of cute aggression. You want to squeeze or bite, but you obviously have to restrain yourself. All day long, you have these tiny urges that go unexpressed. Urges that basically would be considered improper, impolite, against the rules, just not in good taste. Every day, you restrain yourself from acting on impulse. It's what makes us civilized. But those invisible restraints, those social norms, can sort of make us feel like caged animals. We just want to break free, go wild, and indulge in our desires without hesitation. Enter primal play. Primal play is about removing the walls that you use to guard yourself and others. It's about collapsing that gap between impulse and action and indulging your hunger for another person. You're allowed to devour them with your senses, to lose yourself in their body. Your hands, your breath, your movements all seek to overpower them and to claim them. You might wrestle, you might bite, you might grip, and you might look into their eyes as if you could tear them apart, basically consuming them in a frenzy of horniness, passion, and desire. You can see that primal play stands in stark contrast to our banal everyday lives. And this can evoke strong, deep emotional responses, vulnerability, fear, exhilaration, empowerment. And that intensity part, those intense emotions, is what draws people in. When you connect to your most primal self, you're often at your most vulnerable, letting somebody interact with you in a very raw and unfiltered way. Basically, when your needs and desires are laid bare, and that can create a very powerful and transformative connection between you. See, we're often taught to hold back, to not be too much, and to hide what we want. And we fear being judged, rejected, or abandoned. But primal play invites you to bring those desires to the forefront and then have them met by that other person. It becomes a container where shame can dissolve, where expression is allowed, and it's even celebrated. It also creates this sacred dance between taking and allowing. And you pass that gift back and forth, having your needs fulfilled while also experiencing what it feels like to be utterly and viscerally desired by another person. And that's the other side of what makes primal play so fulfilling. Being wanted so badly that the other person seems to lose control and devour you. For dominance, primal play can help you to develop the skill of taking and deepening that dominant mindset. For submissives, it offers a way to experience struggle, surrender, and ravishment in a very highly embodied and instinctual way. Now, what I've been describing is sometimes called primal headspace, which is an altered state of consciousness that's different than subspace, which I have a video on, but it's similarly immersive. And it's often unlocked through intense, high energy emotions like anger, exhilaration, lust and passion, combined with a deep presence of being in the moment. And this primal headspace is a very authentic and vulnerable state to be in. So when you're most in tune with your natural raw urges. And in this state, language can become difficult, your higher reasonings takes a back seat, and you're not thinking, you're just feeling. Now, some people that engage in primal play can find this headspace difficult to snap out of once they become deeply immersed in it. They may need some sort of external cue or some sort of grounding presence to basically return to that cognitive baseline. And this is why aftercare is absolutely essential for primal play. Whether the play was rough, emotional, sensual, or a mix of everything, aftercare is basically how you are going to bring your body and your nervous system back online and reestablish that equilibrium and connection to your more human form. So now let's talk about the risks associated with primal play. Primal play can be as tame or wild as you would like it to be. If your scene leans more towards gentle, loving, and exploratory interaction, then the risks associated with it may be relatively low. But if your play is going to include rough body contact, wrestling, choking, bloodletting, resistance play, emotional S&M, or any other edge play elements, then your risk level is going to increase significantly. This means that you need to know your limits, your needs, and safety considerations before engaging in this kind of play. While primal play is all about letting go of inhibitions, clear negotiation before engaging in play is non-negotiable. In fact, primal play is going to require more defined boundaries and communication, not less. And if you're incorporating elements of consensual non-consent, this means that you need to be crystal clear about what's on the table, what your goals are, and what you absolutely do not want to experience. All of this means that primal play is going to include boundaries, safe words, and consent frameworks, just like any other type of play. Primal play doesn't mean being completely out of control. You are surrendering to instinct, but you're not abandoning responsibility. Maintaining a level of self-control is essential to avoid violating boundaries or ignoring a safe word. If you can't trust yourself to stop when it's needed, then you're probably not ready for primal play. Now that you understand those things, let's talk about some ways to engage in primal play. This is going to be far from an exhaustive list. Just think of it as a starter kit, because the spirit of primal play is following your desires. First thing I'll recommend is to abstain, then indulge. So you know that very intense, built-up hunger you feel after abstaining from sex for a while? That sort of animal urge that you sometimes get to want to tear off your partner's clothes and devour them? Using abstinence can be a great way to stoke that desire and break through inhibition. That hunger is going to lead to a lot of heat and passion. The next thing you can explore is growling or doing some sort of primal vocalizations. These might include growls, grunts, purrs, moans, whispers, howls. Basically, let any of those become your primal language. Most often, we don't let these things come out, so we hide them because we think they're weird. But in primal play, you want to express those. They're going to be expressions of lust, affection, aggression, or even invitation from the other person. The next thing you can explore is activating all of your senses. So in primal play, think about using your whole body. Your hands, your head, your hips, your skin. Use that to touch, compress, grope, and scratch. Breathe your partner in. Taste their sweat. Scratch them, bite them, and leave your mark on them. Listen for their own breaths and growls and vocalizations. Smell them and let their scent drive you wild. Basically, you're getting to know their body like it's your territory to claim. So this can also lead to some very wet and messy play. A lot of times when things get wet and messy, we get squeamish. Because again, things are not supposed to be that way in everyday life. So this could include spit, tears, sweat, cum, squirt, piss, maybe even blood, fake or real, depending on how much risk you want to take in your play. Basically, all this wet messiness really amplifies the primal nature. You may share these, smear them, maybe even offer them as a mark of connection or power. Of course, make sure that you have talked through boundaries about fluid exchange, STIs, and safety around all of these beforehand. The next thing you can explore is rough and tumble play. So think of this as like lion cubs that are wrestling, being playful, competitive, physically throwing each other around. You can do this on the floor, throwing down a mat or on the bed, and just wrestle them, pin them, push them, tickle them, and just let whatever is happening naturally evolve. Tickling might turn into wrestling, which might turn into pinning somebody down, which might then turn into rough fucking. Don't overthink it, just feel through it. Which leads me to the other thing you can explore, which is rough sex. Because sometimes you just want wild, rough, uninhibited, no bars hold rough sex. This might include manhandling, hair pulling, face fucking, spanking, biting, slapping, or choking. Basically, just get as animalistic and dominant as you would like. I have videos for all of those if you're curious about different techniques. You might also engage in fighting for dominance. In the wild, dominance is often earned, not assigned. So in primal play, you can battle each other to see who takes the more dominant role. Struggle, submit, flip the script. That push and pull is going to add allowing power and heat to the scene. You might also engage in chasing, takedown, and capture. So in this type of primal play, one person is going to become the predator and one person is going to become the prey. And the predator is going to chase after the prey, maybe in a more playful way, maybe in a more serious one. This could be as simple as teasing and chasing each other around the house, or as elaborate as planning an outdoor scene where you're hunting your partner through the woods. And once you catch them, you can take them down, rope them, use them, and make that capture count. This also leads me into something else you can explore, which is resistance play or forced submission. This is where one partner is going to struggle and resist and have to be overpowered, basically trying to break free, but the dominant partner is going to keep control, forcing the other person into submission. This could be part of a fight for dominance, as I described earlier, or it might be a more intense scene with CNC elements. Whatever the setup may be, just make sure that it's fully negotiated beforehand. You might also engage in breeding roleplay, because one of the most base instincts and animal urges is the urge to breed and reproduce. So you could hold your partner down, not let them go, and fill them until your desire is satisfied. And this type of roleplay can feel incredibly primal, intimate, and intense. And then the last one I want to mention is fear play, because fear often activates very primal instincts. Fight, flight, freeze, or submitting. Some scenes are going to naturally stir fear, especially if they involve resistance, restraint, or some level of roughness. And you can heighten this with some fear play, maybe through verbal threats, psychological teasing, and very looming presence, or controlled physical intimidation. My warning here, though, is that fear can spiral. So make sure that you always negotiate safe limits and that you use safe words in order to keep the scene grounded and not going into traumatic territory. As you can see, primal play isn't about following rules. It's about shedding them. It's about tapping into that raw, unfiltered part of yourself that craves power, craves touch, craves connection, and craves that intensity. It's about ditching that polite mask that you wear every day and stepping into your instincts with teeth bare and your heart open. So whether you're growling, you're chasing, you're fucking, or simply breathing each other in, primal play is going to invite you to be fully present, fully animal, and fully you. And that can be something that's deeply healing, deeply human, and very hot to be seen in this wild and uninhibited state. So go ahead, let yourself go feral. Now, if you're curious about the different things that you might be able to include in primal play, I recommend checking this video out on Sex Menu that goes through 350 different acts that you can include in sex and BDSM, maybe even in primal play, in a way that you can use that as a communication tool with your partner. So watch that video, and thank you so much for your time and attention.